Breaking. Spax Mining owner and Richard Kazala arrested in Zambia president attack, 27 detained. Moments ago, police confirmed two shocking arrests: Spax Mining boss and businessman Richard Kazala, both accused of being connected to the violent group that stoned President Hakainde Hichilema during his recent public tour. The announcement has sent shockwaves through political and business circles alike. Who exactly is behind this attack? Is this a politically motivated incident, or the start of a wider security crackdown? Tonight, we take you inside the unfolding story that's gripping the nation. The arrests, the allegations, and the unanswered questions that could reshape Zambia's political landscape. Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of InspirAfrica Official. I'm Nakash. Well, it's been quite a week here on the continent, hasn't it? News cycles moving fast, stories unfolding in real time. But today, we have something that demands your full attention. In the heart of Zambia's Copperbelt, a region that once powered the nation's economy, a place where fortunes were made in the copper mines, violence has erupted. Not the violence of desperation alone, but something far more calculated. Something that speaks to the very fragility of democracy when power, money, and grievance collide. Picture this: a sitting president, standing before his people, stones flying through the air, fire consuming market stalls, a presidential motorcade fleeing under a hail of projectiles. And in the aftermath, 27 people arrested. Among them, a mining magnate, a former deputy minister, a church pastor. What happens when a routine presidential visit transforms into a scene of chaos? When the line between protest and insurrection becomes dangerously blurred? When stones thrown at a head of state trigger a nationwide crackdown? Was this spontaneous rage from frustrated citizens, or was it something far more orchestrated, a deliberate assault on the highest office in the land? Who stood to gain from turning Chiwempela Market into a battlefield? What networks lurk behind the violence that forced President Hakainde Hichilema to evacuate under siege? And why are investigators now tracing connections between wealthy businessmen, political figures, and the mob that chased the presidential convoy through the streets of Chingola? Most critically, in a nation heading toward elections in 2026, what does this violent eruption mean for Zambia's democratic future? Are we witnessing the opening salvo of a campaign season that will be written in stones and flames? The revelation came to light on Saturday, November 8, 2025, at approximately 1450 hours in Chingola District, Copperbelt Province. President Hakainde Hichilema had traveled to Chiwempela Market following a devastating fire that had destroyed the commercial hub just days earlier. His mission: to assess the damage, address the concerns of local traders, and discuss pressing issues about mining rights at Sensili, a matter of critical importance to the community. But as the president took to the podium, the atmosphere shifted. What began as a presidential address transformed into pandemonium. According to Superintendent Lloyd Kanando, who filed the initial police report at 1550 hours, an unruly mob began breaking into shops, looting merchandise, and growing increasingly aggressive. When police officers attempted to restore order, the situation spiraled. The crowd didn't disperse, it charged toward the presidential area. Security teams moved swiftly, evacuating President Hichilema from Chiwempela Market to Chikola Secondary School landing grounds. But the mob followed. Stones rained down on the presidential motorcade. Government vehicles were pelted with projectiles. A white Toyota Land Cruiser, registration number ZP2537B, belonging to the Zambia Police Service, was set ablaze by the rioters. The presidential tent itself was torched. By evening, 5 suspects were in custody. Abraham Columbu, 24, unemployed. Abraham Sikhone, 21, a bar attendant. James Banda, 30. Arnold Mbu, 22. Jackson Bulow, 25. All were charged with arson and rioting. But that was only the beginning. By Monday, November 11th, Minister of Home Affairs and Internal Security, Jack Muyimbu, announced the arrest count had risen to 13. The net was widening. Then came the bombshell. Police picked up Kabazo Mulna, known throughout the Copperbelt as Spax, the owner of Spax Mining Limited. Alongside him, Richard Kazala, former Deputy Minister of Sports and former Vice President of the Football Association of Zambia, and Alex Mwale, an assistant pastor at the Pentecostal Church of Christ in Chingola. By the time the dust settled, 27 suspects were in detention. The narrative had shifted from spontaneous riot to organized assault. State intelligence units began reviewing videos, photographs, and digital communications. The question was no longer just what happened, but who orchestrated it. Let's hear directly from those at the center of this storm. Minister Jack Muyimbu, addressing the nation from the ministry headquarters in Lusaka on Monday morning, was unequivocal. The events in Chewempela are totally unacceptable. The New Dawn administration will not tolerate lawlessness from whichever quarters it is coming from. Government has always been open to dialogue whenever citizens have grievances, but violence, especially violence that threatens the life of the Republican president, that crosses a line we cannot ignore. Inspector General of Police Graffel Muzamba issued a stern warning in his official statement dated November 9, 2025. The Zambia Police Service wishes to sternly warn all would-be offenders that acts of violence, riotous behavior, and destruction of property will not be tolerated. The police will continue to pursue and arrest anyone found involved in the riot until all perpetrators are brought to book. We appeal to members of the public to remain calm and cooperate with law enforcement officers as investigations continue. Peaceful expressions of opinions remain a constitutional right, but violence and lawlessness have no place in our society. President Hichilema himself, speaking to UPND officials in Kitwe, delivered perhaps the most striking message of all. I protected those who disturbed us yesterday. Bailey Akindika. They should not extend their luck. I know Zambians have not been used to this style of management, but you will be okay. I can see where we are going. My instruction in 2021 to avoid revenge still stands. But we will not tolerate repeated provocations. The president's tone suggested both restraint and resolve, a leader walking a tightrope between forgiveness and firmness. From the opposition benches, reactions were divided but largely condemnatory. Sunday Chanda, a prominent political figure, stated, "Such attacks must be condemned by every citizen. This is a threat to the rule of law and the dignity of our nation. Any imminent threat to the life of the president is intolerable and must attract swift and decisive consequences." Even PF supporter Chamba Karoma acknowledged, "If you cannot respect Hichilema as an individual, at least respect the office he holds." The president chose humiliation over bloodshed when he refused to authorize force during the breach. Citizens often underestimate the extent to which the system can go when it comes to protecting the president. Bishop Felicitas Muse Pele of the Ndola Christian Ministries Fellowship condemned the conduct. "The behavior we witnessed is un-Zambian and unacceptable. It reflects the effects of broken homes and lack of parental guidance among some youths. Law enforcement agencies must arrest those involved so they can account for their actions." But not all voices were unified. Dr. Fred Membi, president of the Socialist Party, took a different angle. "I am very disappointed. This reflects incompetence, ineptitude, inefficiency, ineffectiveness, and disorderliness." Copperbelt Minister Elisha Matambo, who was supposed to prepare for Mr. Hakainde Hichilema's visit, should have cross-checked and properly analyzed the political situation before taking the president to that rally. "I have seen police officers falling from motor vehicles. Are these officers trained, or are they merely hand-picked UPND cadres?" Membi's criticism extended to President Hichilema's own rhetoric. The president's language was uncouth and unacceptable. He said nobody should disturb their campaigns, yet he opposes others doing the same. There's tension between holding campaign rallies and opposing others' right to campaign. Meanwhile, market leaders in Chewempela scrambled to distance themselves from the violence. Multiple market committees issued public apologies on Sunday. "We do not support violence against any leader. The behavior of the rioters was unacceptable and not representative of Chingola residents. We regret what happened and assure authorities that traders in our community stand for peace." The Law Association of Zambia weighed in with a more measured but equally serious statement. "Attacks on a head of state amount to a direct assault on national order. We urge political actors to avoid exploiting this incident. Any investigation must protect due process. Democratic dissent must never translate into physical harm." So what does all of this mean? What are we really looking at here? First, Let's consider the strategic timing. Zambia is 16 months from general elections in August 2026. The Copperbelt has historically been a battleground region, economically vital, politically volatile, and socially complex. Any incident here reverberates across the entire nation. The arrest of Kabazo Spax Mining is particularly significant. This isn't his first brush with controversy. Back in 2020, during the previous administration under President Edgar Lungu, Spax was detained on suspicion of involvement in the mysterious gassing incidents that terrorized communities across Zambia. He was charged with murder and other serious offenses, though the cases were murky and politically charged. Spax's public image is that of a wealthy, connected young businessman, someone who once posed with guns, surrounded by police officers who reportedly saluted him as Kopala Sabala, the untouchable man of the Copperbelt. There are photographs of him with senior political figures, including former President Lungu himself. Now he finds himself detained at Chingola police station, linked to an attack on President Hichilema, the very man whose administration once came to power promising to root out the networks of political patronage and violence that flourished under the previous regime. Richard Kazala's arrest raises equally complex questions. As a former deputy minister and former FAZ vice president, Kazala is a well-known figure in Chingola. Interestingly, Kazala himself had recently spoken out about violence, but in a different context. He condemned an earlier attack on former President Edgar Lungu by UPND cadres, stating that he knew the identities of Lungu's attackers and calling for their arrest. Now Kazala finds himself on the other side of the equation, detained for alleged involvement in violence against the sitting president. The irony is not lost on political observers. Then there's Alex Mwale, the assistant pastor. His inclusion in the arrests adds a religious dimension to the case. In Zambian society, church leaders wield significant moral authority. Their involvement, or alleged involvement, in political violence raises uncomfortable questions about the intersection of faith, politics, and power. Security analysts are pointing to troubling patterns in the Chingola incident. The sequence of events, the looting, the coordinated charge toward the presidential area, the pursuit of the motorcade from Chiwempala Market to the landing zone, suggests familiarity with presidential movement patterns. Several commentators with experience in crowd control have stated publicly that the behavior did not appear spontaneous. State intelligence is now combing through digital communications. Were WhatsApp groups used to coordinate the attack? Social media platforms to mobilize participants? Financial records to trace payments? The broader implications are profound. Zambia has prided itself on being one of Africa's more stable democracies. Presidential transitions have been largely peaceful. But the Chingola incident exposes fault lines. Economic grievance in mining communities, political tensions as elections approach, security gaps in presidential protection, and the persistent shadow of patronage networks that transcend party lines. President Hichilema's warning that some of the individuals behind Saturday's attack may be planning similar disruptions ahead of the 2026 polls suggests the government views this not as an isolated incident but as a potential template for electoral violence. Opposition figures, meanwhile, are raising concerns about a different kind. That the arrests could be used to stifle political competition, that security forces might overreach, that genuine grievances about governance and economic hardship could be criminalized rather than addressed. The legal questions are equally complex. What charges will ultimately be brought? Arson and rioting for the initial suspects, yes. But what about those higher up the chain, if indeed there is a chain? Could charges of treason or sedition be considered for those alleged to have orchestrated an attack on the president? And what about the underlying issues that made Chingola a powder keg in the first place? The market fire that destroyed livelihoods. The tensions over mining rights at Sensili. The allegations of UPND cadres invading Spax mining operations. The economic pressures on communities dependent on the copper industry. As one senior official put it privately, this was not hooliganism. This crossed into an assault on the state. But others counter. When citizens feel unheard, when economic survival is at stake, when political space narrows, what avenues remain for dissent? Thank you for watching this edition of InspirAfrica Official. What we've witnessed in Chingola is a moment that will define Zambian politics for months, perhaps years to come. 27 people behind bars. A mining magnate, a former deputy minister, a church pastor, all implicated in an attack on the presidency. A nation grappling with questions about violence, justice, and the path forward. This story is far from over. Investigations continue. More arrests may follow. Court cases will unfold. And Zambia will watch closely to see whether this moment becomes a turning point toward accountability and rule of law, or whether it deepens the divisions that threaten the country's democratic fabric. What do you think? Was this a coordinated assault on democracy, or a spontaneous explosion of frustration? Should those arrested face the full force of the law, or are there legitimate grievances being silenced? How should Zambia navigate the tension between security and political freedom as elections approach? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a conversation about what this means, not just for Zambia, but for democracy across Africa. I'll be back tomorrow with more news, more analysis, more stories from across the continent. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay safe. This is Nakash, signing off.